The punch came without warning. Lieutenant Commander Vance Thornton's fist connected with Sierra Blackwood's face so hard that blood exploded from her nose across her tactical vest. She staggered, but didn't fall. 23 Navy SEALs watched in absolute silence. Not one of them moved to help their commanding officer. Instead, every single operator took 3 steps backward away from Thornton, forming a half circle behind the bleeding woman. She wiped crimson from her lips, smiled through shattered cartilage, and spoke 5 words that would destroy everything he'd built. "Request formal combatives challenge, sir." Hey folks, whether you're watching from military bases overseas or your living room at home, make sure to hit that subscribe button because stories like this need to be told. Stay with me until the very end and drop a comment telling me which city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. The morning had started like any other at Naval Special Warfare Group 1. Sierra Blackwood had been awake since 0430, running the sand berms along the Silver Strand, while most of Coronado still slept. 18 months she'd worn the trident. 18 months of proving herself every single day to men who'd rather she didn't exist. At 31 years old, Petty Officer First Class Sierra Blackwood stood 5 feet 4 inches tall and weighed 128 pounds soaking wet. The math said she shouldn't be here. The statistics said women couldn't handle the pipeline. The old guard said integration would destroy the teams. Sierra didn't care much for math statistics or the old guard. Her father had been Master Chief Daniel Blackwood, legendary operator, 17 combat deployments killed protecting his teammates during the Benghazi nightmare, while politicians argued about response protocols. She'd been 19 years old when they handed her a folded flag and told her he died a hero. She'd joined the Marines the next morning. "Blackwood, you're late?" Senior Chief Pete Morrison stood near the Tactical Operations Center, arms crossed, but his eyes held warmth despite the gruff words. He'd served under her father for 6 years. He'd taught her to shoot when she was 12. "Negative, Senior. I'm 4 minutes early." "That's late in the teams." "Then I'll be 3 minutes early tomorrow." Morrison almost smiled. Almost. "Thornton called a full muster. Urban warfare exercise at the kill house. Brass is flying in from Washington to observe." Sierra felt her jaw tighten. Lieutenant Commander Vance Thornton had arrived 6 weeks ago, and those 6 weeks had been the longest of her naval career. The man carried himself like he'd conquered Fallujah single-handedly, but his service record showed nothing but desk assignments and political connections. "Any idea what he's planning?" Morrison's expression darkened. "Whatever it is, watch your 6. He's been asking questions about you, about your qualifications, about whether your scores were adjusted." The implication hung in the air like smoke from a flashbang. "My scores weren't adjusted, Senior." "I know that. You know that. Every operator who watched you complete the pipeline knows that." Morrison lowered his voice. "But Thornton's father is a 3-star at the Pentagon, the kind of man who makes problems disappear." Sierra had heard the rumors. Lieutenant Commander Vance Thornton wasn't just another officer climbing the ranks. He was the tip of a spear aimed directly at the heart of military integration. 3 female candidates had washed out of various special operations programs in the past 2 years. All 3 had trained under officers connected to Thornton's circle. All 3 had experienced equipment failures, scheduling conflicts, and evaluation discrepancies. None of them had filed formal complaints. None of them were still serving. "I didn't survive Hell Week to let some Pentagon prince push me out, Senior." Morrison nodded slowly. "Your father said something similar once, right before he did something incredibly brave and monumentally stupid." He paused. "He'd be proud of you, Sierra. Remember that whatever happens today." The words settled into her chest like a weight. She carried her father's challenge coin in her left cargo pocket, had carried it through every evolution, every deployment, every moment when quitting seemed like the rational choice. The metal was worn smooth from her fingers, rubbing it during the darkest hours. She headed toward the kill house, where the rest of SEAL Team 7's Charlie platoon was already assembling. 23 operators stood in formation when Sierra took her position. She knew every face had bled alongside most of them during training, had saved 2 of their lives during a firefight in Syria when an ambush went sideways and ammunition ran low. Chief Petty Officer Marcus Webb stood at the front of the formation. At 54 years old, he was the oldest active operator in the teams, a living legend who'd refused multiple promotions because he wanted to stay in the fight. He'd been her father's best friend. He'd carried her father's body to the extraction helicopter in Benghazi. Their eyes met briefly. Webb gave an almost imperceptible nod. Whatever was coming, she wasn't facing it alone. Lieutenant Commander Vance Thornton strode into view like a man who'd never experienced doubt. 34 years old, 6 feet 3 inches, 220 pounds of West Point boxing champion, packed into a dress uniform that had never seen actual combat. His chest displayed ribbons earned behind desks and in conference rooms. Behind him walked Captain Reynolds, the visiting observer from Washington, and 2 other officers Sierra didn't recognize. Pentagon types, evaluators, the kind of men who decided careers with the stroke of a pen. "Good morning, gentlemen," Thornton's voice carried across the assembly. "And lady." The word dripped with contempt. Several operators shifted uncomfortably. Sierra kept her expression neutral, but her hands curled slightly at her sides. "Today's evolution will test your urban warfare capabilities under stress conditions. We'll be running breach and clear scenarios with simulated opposition forces." Thornton began pacing his polished boots, clicking against concrete. "The brass wants to see what SEAL Team 7 is made of. I want to show them excellence." His eyes found Sierra. "I also want to address some concerns that have been raised about qualification standards, specifically whether certain accommodations have been made to meet diversity quotas rather than operational requirements." The silence that followed was absolute. Chief Webb's jaw tightened visibly. Senior Chief Morrison took a half step forward before catching himself. Sierra felt heat rising in her chest, but kept her voice level. "Sir, if you have concerns about any operator's qualifications, perhaps we should discuss them through proper channels." Thornton smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Proper channels. He repeated the words like they tasted bitter. "Petty Officer Blackwood, you completed the SEAL pipeline 18 months ago. First woman to earn a trident through the standard program. Quite an achievement." "I completed the same training as everyone else, sir." "Did you?" Thornton moved close enough that she could smell his cologne. "Because I've reviewed your file. I've spoken with instructors. And I have questions about certain anomalies in your evaluation scores." Chief Webb stepped forward. "Sir Blackwood's scores were verified by—" "I wasn't speaking to you, Chief." Thornton didn't break eye contact with Sierra. "I was speaking to the diversity hire who's apparently too fragile to answer questions about her own qualifications." The temperature in the assembly seemed to drop 10 degrees. "I'm not fragile, sir." Sierra's voice remained steady, though every instinct screamed at her to break his nose. "And I'm happy to demonstrate my qualifications in any evolution you'd like to design." "Is that so?" Thornton's smile widened. "Then let's start with the breach sequence. You'll take point." Chief Webb spoke again, more forcefully this time. "Sir, the breach sequence calls for a 4-man stack. Blackwood is our designated medic for this evolution. Protocol dictates that I'm the commanding officer of this platoon, Chief." Thornton's voice turned cold. And I'm ordering Petty Officer Blackwood to take point on the breach, unless she'd like to admit that she's not actually qualified for combat operations. Every operator in the formation understood what was happening. Taking point on a breach was the most dangerous position first through the door, first to encounter threats. It required split-second decision-making and absolute precision. Thornton was setting her up to fail in front of Washington observers, or setting her up to get hurt. Sierra stepped forward. "I'll take point, sir." "Sierra," Webb's voice was barely a whisper. "I said I'll take point, Chief." She met Thornton's eyes without flinching. "Just tell me when." The kill house was a maze of plywood walls, doorways, and blind corners designed to simulate urban combat environments. Sierra had run this course hundreds of times. She knew every angle, every potential threat location, every tactical option. What she didn't know was that Thornton had modified the scenario. "All right, Blackwood, here's the situation." Thornton stood outside the structure addressing her while the rest of the team prepared. "Intelligence indicates 3 hostiles inside holding 1 hostage. Your mission is to breach neutralize threats and extract the hostage. Standard rules of engagement." Sierra nodded, checking her training weapon. "Understood, sir." "Oh, one more thing." Thornton's voice dropped so only she could hear. "The threat assessment I provided to your team, it's wrong. There are actually 6 hostiles inside, not 3. And they've been told to focus their fire on whoever comes through the door first." Sierra's blood turned to ice. Sir, providing false intelligence to a breach team is what Petty Officer a training exercise designed to test adaptability under stress. Thornton leaned closer. "Or are you saying you can't handle a little pressure, that maybe you're not cut out for real operations?" She understood then with perfect clarity what he was doing. If she succeeded, despite the false intelligence he'd claimed, the exercise proved nothing. If she failed, he'd document her inability to perform under stress. If she complained, she'd be labeled as unable to handle the demands of special operations. There was no winning move, so she decided to change the game. "Sir, I'd like to request a modification to the exercise." Thornton's eyes narrowed. "What kind of modification?" "Let me run the breach alone. No team support. If there are 6 hostiles instead of 3, I should be able to handle them without risking other operators." She paused. "Unless you think that's too dangerous for a diversity hire." The challenge hung in the air. Several nearby operators exchanged glances. Chief Webb looked like he wanted to intervene, but knew doing so would only make things worse. Thornton's smile returned. "Approved. Run it solo. Show us what you're made of." Sierra moved toward the entry point, her mind already calculating angles, distances, timing. 6 hostiles meant 6 engagement decisions. The training weapons fired paint rounds, non-lethal, but painful enough to simulate real consequences. She thought about her father. About the last conversation they'd had before Benghazi. About his voice telling her that courage wasn't the absence of fear, but the decision that something else mattered more. Breaching in 3, 2, 1, the door exploded inward. Sierra moved like water through the structure, her training weapon up, her senses hyper-aware. The first hostile appeared on her left, paint round center mass before he could react. The second came from a doorway ahead. 2 rounds, both on target. She cleared the first room in 4 seconds. The third hostile was waiting around a blind corner exactly where false intelligence wouldn't have predicted. Sierra had already anticipated his position based on the structure's layout. 1 round to the chest, moving before his body hit the ground. 3 down. 3 to go. The 4th and 5th hostiles engaged simultaneously from opposite angles, a crossfire designed to be impossible to escape. Sierra dropped to one knee, reducing her target profile, and fired 2 rounds left, 2 rounds right. Both hostiles marked before they could adjust their aim. 5 down. 1 to go. The final hostile had positioned himself behind the hostage mannequin, using it as cover. Standard training doctrine said to negotiate, to seek an angle, to wait for backup. Sierra didn't have backup. She calculated the angles in a heartbeat. The hostile's weapon was aimed at her center mass. He had the advantage of cover. She had approximately 0.8 seconds before he could fire. She fired once the paint round passing within inches of the mannequin's head and striking the hostile directly in the throat. He went down, clutching his neck, the exercise over. 6 hostiles neutralized in 11 seconds. Sierra emerged from the kill house, breathing hard paint splatters on her vest from near misses, but none marking a fatal hit. The assembled operators stared in stunned silence. The Washington observers exchanged looks of unmistakable impression. Chief Webb's weathered face split into the first genuine smile she'd seen from him in months. Thornton's expression was something else entirely. "Debriefing in 10 minutes. He snapped, then turned and walked away without acknowledging her performance. Senior Chief Morrison appeared at her side. "That was the most impressive breach I've seen in 20 years. It was a setup, Senior. He gave me false intelligence, told me there were 3 hostiles when there were 6. Morrison's face went pale. "He what?" "Told me privately. No witnesses. His word against mine." Sierra shook her head. "He's not trying to evaluate me. He's trying to destroy me." "Then we need to document this, file a formal, and become the woman who couldn't hack it without running to investigators." Sierra's voice was harder than she intended. "No. If Thornton wants a fight, I'll give him one. But it'll be on my terms, not his." The debriefing went exactly as she'd expected. Thornton spent 20 minutes discussing minor procedural variations while completely ignoring her flawless execution under impossible conditions. The Washington observers asked pointed questions about her technique. Thornton deflected each one. The exercise demonstrated adequate baseline competency. Thornton concluded, his voice dripping with condescension. "However, I have concerns about decision-making under pressure. Petty Officer Blackwood's approach was aggressive to the point of recklessness." Sierra bit the inside of her cheek until she tasted copper. Chief Webb spoke up. "Sir, with respect, she neutralized 6 hostiles in 11 seconds while operating with compromised intelligence. That's not recklessness. That's exceptional tactical performance." "Are you questioning my assessment, Chief?" "I'm providing context, sir. Context that seems relevant to an accurate evaluation." The room went silent. Officers questioning enlisted assessments was normal. Enlisted questioning officers was career suicide. Webb didn't back down. "Your father was the same way, Chief." Thornton's voice carried a warning. "Always thought he knew better than his commanding officers. Look where that got him." Sierra's vision went red at the edges. Her father's name. In Thornton's mouth. Used as a threat. "Sir." Her voice came out steady despite the rage boiling in her chest. "My father died protecting his teammates from a coordinated assault while awaiting support that never came. His actions saved 7 lives. I'd appreciate if you'd show appropriate respect for a fallen operator." Thornton turned slowly to face her. "Appropriate respect. You want to talk about respect, Petty Officer?" He stepped closer, invading her personal space. "Your father was a glory hound who got himself killed because he couldn't follow orders. Just like you can't seem to follow the simple instruction to stay in your lane." Chief Webb moved forward. "Sir, that's enough. Stand down, Chief. That's an order." "Sir, I said stand down." The room had become a pressure cooker. Every operator present could feel something terrible building something that couldn't be contained much longer. Sierra held her ground, despite every instinct screaming at her to back away. "My father followed his orders, sir. The orders that came too late to save the ambassador. The orders that came from men more concerned with political optics than operational reality." "Careful, petty officer. That sounds like insubordination." "It's not insubordination, sir. It's historical fact. The after-action reports are public record." Thornton's face had gone from pale to crimson. His hands were shaking slightly at his sides. The Washington observers looked increasingly uncomfortable with the direction of the confrontation. "You think you're special, don't you?" Thornton's voice dropped to a hiss. "You think because you made it through the pipeline, because the media wrote stories about the first female SEAL, that you're somehow untouchable. Let me tell you something, sweetheart. Women don't belong in special operations. You're a political experiment, nothing more. And when you fail, and you will fail, I'm going to personally ensure that your failure is so spectacular that no woman ever tries this again." The word sweetheart hung in the air like a slap. Sierra felt something shift inside her. Not anger, not fear, but something colder. Something her grandfather had recognized during their training sessions in his garage when he'd taught her that the most dangerous fighters weren't the ones who lost their temper. They were the ones who found their center in chaos. "Sir, I understand that my presence makes you uncomfortable. I understand that you believe I don't belong here." Her voice was calm, almost conversational. "But I earned my trident the same way everyone else did. I've bled for this team. I've killed for this team. And with respect, sir, your opinion of my qualifications matters significantly less than my actual performance." The next 3 seconds changed everything. Thornton's fist came without warning, a straight right that connected with Sierra's face with enough force to shatter cartilage. Her nose exploded in a spray of blood. She staggered backward but didn't fall. The room erupted in chaos. "What the hell? Did he just— Someone get a medic!" But Sierra wasn't listening to the shouting. She was watching the other operators, watching as 23 Navy SEALs, her teammates, her brothers, made a choice in that moment that would define everything that followed. Not one of them moved toward Thornton. Every single one of them stepped back away from their commanding officer and formed a half-circle behind her. Chief Webb's voice cut through the noise. "Nobody touch her. Nobody touch him. This is going to be handled properly." Sierra wiped blood from her lips. Her nose was definitely broken. The pain was extraordinary sharp and white-hot, but pain was an old friend. Pain had kept her company through hell, week through Syria, through every moment when quitting would have been easier. Pain was just information. She looked at Thornton, at his flushed face, at his clenched fists, at the dawning realization in his eyes that he'd just committed assault in front of 24 witnesses and Washington observers. "Sir." Her voice was steady, despite the blood still flowing from her shattered nose. "I'd like to formally request a combatives challenge. Standard rules, submission or referee stoppage." The room went absolutely silent. Combatives challenges were rare, but legal under naval special warfare protocols. They allowed operators to settle disputes through controlled physical confrontation, witnessed and documented. They were designed to prevent exactly what had just happened, violent outbursts that could damage unit cohesion. What they rarely involved was a commanding officer facing a subordinate. What they never involved was a 5'4" woman facing a 6'3" boxing champion. Thornton's expression shifted from panic to calculation. He outweighed her by nearly 100 pounds. He'd boxed competitively for years. In his mind, this was an opportunity to prove everything he believed about women in combat. "You want a formal challenge, petty officer?" His voice had regained its arrogance. "After what just happened, most people would be running to medical filing assault charges." I'm not most people, sir. No, you're not. Thornton straightened his uniform, wiping her blood from his knuckles. Fine. I accept your challenge. Tomorrow morning, 600 the combatives ring. Full team witnesses. He smiled, and it was the ugliest expression Sierra had ever seen. Try not to embarrass yourself too badly. He turned and walked out of the briefing room, the Washington observers trailing behind him with expressions that suggested they'd just witnessed something they couldn't quite believe. Chief Webb was at Sierra's side immediately. Let me look at that nose. It's broken. I know it's broken. I need to know if you can still breathe. I can breathe fine, Chief. Webb studied her face, then shook his head slowly. You realize what you just did. You gave him exactly what he wanted. A chance to beat you publicly, legally, with witnesses. No, Chief. I gave myself a chance to beat him publicly, legally, with witnesses. Sierra accepted the field dressing he pressed against her nose. There's a difference. He's going to try to kill you in that ring. He's going to try. Sierra's voice was muffled by the dressing, but firm. Trying and succeeding are two very different things. Senior Chief Morrison approached his expression troubled. Blackwood, we need to talk about what just happened. That was assault. Clear as day. NCIS needs to be involved. After the challenge. After, are you insane? The man broke your nose in front of witnesses. His career is over. You don't need to prove anything. Sierra lowered the dressing, meeting Morrison's eyes despite the blood still seeping from her shattered face. This isn't about proving anything, Senior. It's about finishing something. Thornton didn't just attack me. He attacked everything my father built, everything the men who trained me believed in, everything this team represents. She paused, feeling the weight of her father's challenge coin in her pocket. Tomorrow morning I'm going to show him what a Blackwood is made of. And when I'm done, there won't be any questions left about whether I belong here. Chief Webb and Senior Chief Morrison exchanged a look that carried 20 years of shared history and unspoken understanding. Your father, Webb said quietly, was the most stubborn son of a bitch I ever served with. He'd charge into hell if he thought it was the right thing to do, consequences be damned. A pause. You're exactly like him. That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me, Chief. It wasn't entirely a compliment. Webb turned to the assembled operators, raising his voice. All right, everyone. You saw what happened here. You'll see what happens tomorrow. Until then, nobody talks to NCIS. Nobody talks to Command. Nobody talks to anyone outside this team. We handle this our way. 23 voices responded in unison. Hooyah, Chief. Sierra felt something warm spread through her chest, despite the cold reality of her broken nose and the fight waiting for her at dawn. These men, these brothers she'd bled beside, they'd made their choice. They were standing with her. Thornton had made his play. He'd used his fists when his words failed. He'd revealed himself as exactly what Sierra had suspected from the beginning. A coward hiding behind rank and connections, terrified of what her success represented. Tomorrow, she would show him what real combat looked like. Tomorrow, she would honor her father's memory in the only way that mattered. Tomorrow, Lieutenant Commander Vance Thornton would learn that some lessons come with a very high price. Sierra pressed the bloody dressing against her face and smiled through the pain. She couldn't wait. The medical officer finished resetting Sierra's nose with a crack that echoed through the empty treatment room. She didn't make a sound. Not a whimper, not a flinch. The corpsman had seen operators cry from this procedure. Sierra Blackwood just stared at the wall and breathed. You're cleared for duty, he said, packing away his instruments. But I'm documenting everything. The angle of impact, the force required, the pattern of injury. This wasn't training. This was assault. Document whatever you need, Doc. Just don't file anything until after tomorrow morning. He stopped moving. Blackwood, what he did, I know what he did. And tomorrow, I'm going to return the favor. Legally. The corpsman studied her face, the swelling already turning purple around her eyes, the white tape holding her shattered nose in place. He'd served with her father. He'd seen that same look of absolute determination before. Your father used to say that revenge was a dish best served cold. My father was wrong about a lot of things. Sierra slid off the examination table. Sometimes revenge needs to be served while everyone's watching. She walked out of medical into the California night, where Chief Webb was waiting beside a government vehicle. "Get in," he said. "There's something you need to see." They drove in silence for 20 minutes away from the base, away from the ocean, into the residential areas of Coronado, where senior enlisted personnel lived with their families. Webb pulled into the driveway of a modest ranch house. The lawn perfectly maintained the American flag hanging motionless in the still air. "Whose house is this? Mine. But tonight, it belongs to someone who needs to talk to you." Inside, a woman sat at Webb's kitchen table. She was younger than Sierra expected, maybe 28, with short brown hair and the posture of someone who'd spent years in uniform. But her eyes held something Sierra recognized immediately. The look of someone who'd been broken and was still trying to piece herself back together. "Sierra Blackwood, meet Lieutenant Commander Sarah Chen, former helicopter pilot, Naval Special Warfare Support Squadron." Chen didn't stand. Her hands were wrapped around a coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping her anchored to reality. "You're the one who challenged Thornton," Chen said. "I saw it on the security footage. Webb showed me." "Security footage?" Sierra turned to Webb. "Chief, what the hell is going on?" "Sit down, Blackwood. What I'm about to tell you changes everything." Sierra sat. Chen took a deep breath. 3 years ago, I was on the fast track to commanding my own squadron, top pilot in my class, first woman qualified for night operations in the support wing. Then Vance Thornton transferred to my unit as executive officer. The coffee cup trembled slightly in her hands. He started small, comments about my appearance, questions about whether I could really handle the aircraft, assignments that kept me away from high-profile missions. When I complained through proper channels, nothing happened. His father made a phone call, and suddenly my complaint disappeared from the system. Sierra felt ice forming in her stomach. What happened next? He escalated, falsified maintenance reports to ground my aircraft during a critical mission. When the mission went wrong without proper air support, he blamed me. Said I'd refused to fly because I was having female problems. Chen's voice cracked. I had documentation proving he'd ordered the maintenance stand-down. It vanished from the system overnight. Jesus. I filed for a formal investigation. 3 days later, I was diagnosed with a psychiatric condition I'd never shown symptoms of. Mandatory medical discharge. Career over. Chen finally looked up, and her eyes were burning. The psychiatrist who made the diagnosis. His wife works for a defense contractor that Thornton's father has connections to. Webb leaned forward. Chen isn't the only one. We've identified at least 5 other women across different special operations units. All of them crossed paths with Thornton or officers in his network. All of them washed out under suspicious circumstances. Network. Sierra's mind was racing. You're saying this is organized? There's a group of senior officers who believe integration is destroying military readiness. They call themselves the Restoration Council. Thornton's father is one of the founding members. Webb pulled a folder from a drawer and slid it across the table. They've been systematically targeting female operators and pilots for the past 6 years, ruining careers, destroying evidence, making problems disappear. Sierra opened the folder. Names, dates, incident reports that had been altered or deleted. A pattern so clear it was almost impossible to miss once you knew what to look for. Why are you showing me this now? Because tomorrow isn't just about you and Thornton. Webb's voice carried the weight of decades of service. Tomorrow is about exposing everything they've built. And to do that, we need you to win. Sierra closed the folder slowly. Her broken nose throbbed with every heartbeat. Her hands wanted to shake, but she forced them still. No pressure, right? Chen almost smiled. I tried to fight them through the system. The system failed me. You're fighting them the old-fashioned way. She reached across the table and gripped Sierra's hand. Make it hurt. The drive back to base was silent, until Webb pulled into the parking lot near the team building. There's something else you should know, he said, not looking at her. About your father. Sierra went still. Daniel and I served together for years, but what I never told you was that he was investigating the Restoration Council before Benghazi. He'd found evidence of their operations. He was planning to go public. The world seemed to tilt sideways. Are you saying? I'm saying the response delays in Benghazi came from somewhere. I'm saying your father made enemies in very high places. Webb's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I'm saying be very careful tomorrow, Sierra, because if you win, you become a target for something much bigger than one lieutenant commander with an ego problem. Sierra sat in the darkness of the vehicle, processing information that rewrote everything she thought she knew about her father's death. Did they kill him, the council? I don't know. I've been trying to find proof for 6 years. Webb finally turned to face her. But I know this, your father would have wanted you to finish what he started. Whatever that costs. She opened the door and stepped out into the night air. Chief, one more thing. Yeah, if something happens to me tomorrow, if Thornton or his people try something, make sure Chen's story gets out. Make sure everyone knows what they've been doing. Webb nodded slowly. Nothing's going to happen to you, Blackwood. You're going to walk into that ring, tear that son of a bitch apart, and walk out a legend. You sound very confident. I watched your father train you since you were 8 years old. I know exactly what you're capable of. A pause. So does Thornton. That's why he's scared. That's why he hit you. Scared men make mistakes. Sierra walked toward the barracks, her mind churning with revelations. The Restoration Council. Her father's investigation. The systematic destruction of women's careers across special operations. This was bigger than one fight. Bigger than one broken nose. Bigger than proving she belonged. This was war. And tomorrow, she was going to fire the opening shot. The barracks common room was empty when she entered, but she wasn't alone for long. Senior Chief Morrison appeared from the shadows, followed by 3 other operators, Petty Officers Reyes, Thompson, and Kim. The core of her fire team. The men who'd fought beside her in Syria. Couldn't sleep, Reyes said, his massive frame settling into a chair that creaked under his weight. Figured you couldn't either. What are you guys doing here? Making sure you're ready. Thompson pulled something from his pocket and set it on the table. A worn leather journal, edges soft with age. This belonged to your father. Chief Webb gave it to me after Benghazi. Said to hold on to it until the right moment. Sierra's breath caught in her throat. She recognized the journal. Her father had written in it every night, documenting his thoughts, his missions, his strategies. I can't take this. You're not taking it. You're borrowing it. Thompson pushed it toward her. There's an entry about 3/4 of the way through. Your father wrote it after watching you compete in your first Sambo tournament. You were 15. Sierra opened the journal with trembling fingers, turning pages filled with her father's precise handwriting, until she found the entry Thompson had mentioned. The words blurred as tears she refused to shed pressed against her eyes. Today, I watched my daughter defeat an opponent twice her size using nothing but technique and will. The other coaches said it was luck. The judges said it was a fluke. I know the truth. Sierra isn't lucky. She isn't a fluke. She is the most natural fighter I've ever seen, and I've trained with the best warriors on the planet. When she steps into combat, something happens. She becomes calm, focused, almost peaceful. The chaos doesn't touch her. She processes information faster than anyone I've trained, sees patterns others miss, exploits weaknesses before opponents know they exist. I used to worry that I was pushing her too hard, that I was trying to make her into the operator I always wanted to be. But I understand now that I'm not making her into anything. I'm simply removing the obstacles between her and who she already is. My daughter is a warrior. God help anyone who ever forgets that. Sierra closed the journal and pressed it against her chest. He knew, she whispered. Even then, he knew. Your father saw everything, Morrison said quietly. He saw the future of the teams. He saw what you would become, and he spent years making sure you had every tool you'd need to survive it. Kim spoke for the first time, his voice barely above a whisper. There's something else. The three of us talked, and we have a proposal. What kind of proposal? Tomorrow before the fight, we want to do something. Kim glanced at the others, who nodded. Every operator in the platoon except Thornton's 3 loyalists has agreed. We're going to show him exactly where we stand. Show him how? You'll see. Reyes stood, his expression fierce. Just know that whatever happens in that ring, you're not fighting alone. You never were. They left one by one, each stopping to grip her shoulder or touch her arm in silent solidarity. When the room was empty again, Sierra sat alone with her father's journal and the weight of everything she'd learned. The Restoration Council. The systematic targeting of women warriors. Her father's investigation and its possible connection to his death. The fight tomorrow that had transformed from personal vindication into something with stakes she was only beginning to understand. She opened the journal again, reading entries at random. Her father's thoughts on combat, on leadership, on the meaning of service. His reflections on raising a daughter in a world that didn't want to make room for her. His fears that she would face obstacles he couldn't protect her from. One entry, written 3 months before Benghazi, stopped her cold. I've found something I wasn't supposed to find. A network of officers working to reverse integration across special operations. They have connections at the highest levels. They've already destroyed careers, covered up assaults, made evidence disappear. I'm gathering documentation, building a case. When I have enough, I'm going to blow this wide open. But I'm also making contingency plans. If something happens to me, the information needs to get out. I've sent copies to people I trust, including Webb. I've also left breadcrumbs for Sierra to follow when she's ready. I hope she never needs them. I hope this is paranoia. But if it isn't, if they come for me, I need to know that someone will continue the fight. My daughter is strong enough. She's always been strong enough. She just doesn't know it yet. Sierra's tears finally broke free, streaming down her face as she clutched the journal. I know it now. Dad, she whispered into the empty room. I know it now. The hours before dawn passed slowly. Sierra didn't try to sleep. Instead, she read her father's journal, cover to cover, absorbing his wisdom, his warnings, his love. At 0500, she began her preparation routine. Stretching, breathing exercises, mental visualization of techniques her grandfather had taught her, combinations her father had refined, strategies she'd developed through years of competition and combat. At 0545, Chief Webb knocked on her door. It's time. The walk to the combatives area felt different than any walk Sierra had taken before. The sky was just beginning to lighten, painting everything in shades of gray and purple. Her broken nose throbbed steadily, a metronome keeping time with her heartbeat. When they rounded the corner, she stopped. The combatives' ring was surrounded by operators. Not just her platoon, every available SEAL from Team 7 had gathered in the early morning darkness. 60, maybe 70 men standing in silence, their faces hard and expectant. And in the center of the ring, Lieutenant Commander Vance Thornton was already waiting. He'd stripped down to shorts and a compression shirt, his muscular frame gleaming with pre-fight preparation. His expression was smug, confident. He believed he was about to prove everything he'd always known about women in combat. Chief Webb walked Sierra to the edge of the ring, then turned to face the assembled operators. "Before we begin, the team has something to say." What happened next would become legend in naval special warfare history. Every operator except Thornton's 3 loyalists reached up and removed their trident pins. Gold glinted in the early morning light as 60-plus warfare insignia were held aloft. Then, moving in unison, they placed their tridents in a circle on the ground around Sierra. "We stand with Petty Officer Blackwood," Webb announced, his voice carrying across the silent assembly. "She earned her trident the same way we earned ours, through blood, sweat, and sacrifice. Anyone who says otherwise is a liar and a coward." The message was unmistakable. The team had chosen sides. Thornton's face went from smug to murderous in an instant. "This is a formal combatives challenge," he snarled, "not a political demonstration. Get those pins off the deck and let's get this over with." "The pins stay," Webb replied calmly. "They're a reminder of what we're fighting for." "Fine." Thornton stepped forward, his massive fists already raised. "Then let's see if your diversity hire can back up all this drama." Sierra stepped into the ring. She moved to the center and faced the man who'd broken her nose, insulted her father's memory, and represented everything that was trying to destroy what she'd worked her entire life to build. Her hands came up in a relaxed guard. Her breathing slowed. The world narrowed to this moment, this opponent, this fight. 5-minute rounds, Webb announced. "Submission or referee stoppage. No strikes to the groin or throat. Everything else is legal." He paused. "Begin." Thornton charged immediately, just as Sierra knew he would. The fight was on. Thornton's first punch missed her jaw by inches. Sierra had already moved, slipping left, as his fist whistled past her ear. He was fast for his size, faster than she'd expected, but his technique was pure boxing. Straight lines, predictable angles. The kind of fighting that worked in a ring with rules and referees who stopped things before they got ugly. This wasn't that kind of fight. She circled right, forcing him to adjust his stance. His footwork was heavy each step, announcing his intentions like a telegram. Her grandfather's voice echoed in her mind. Big men telegraph. Small fighters read. "Stand still and fight," Thornton growled, throwing a combination that she weaved through like smoke. "Stop running like a scared little girl." She didn't respond. Talking wasted energy. Talking revealed emotion. Thornton wanted her angry, wanted her making mistakes. He threw a jab cross-hook combination, textbook West Point boxing. Sierra parried the jab, slipped the cross, and ducked under the hook. As his arm sailed over her head, she drove her elbow into his floating rib with enough force to crack cartilage. Thornton grunted and stumbled sideways. The assembled operators made no sound, but Sierra felt their energy shift. First blood, even if it wasn't visible. "Lucky shot," Thornton spat, resetting his stance. "Won't happen again." He came forward more cautiously now, respecting her speed. His jabs were tighter, his combinations shorter. He was adapting, using his reach advantage to keep her at distance, where his superior weight would eventually wear her down. Sierra let him think it was working. For 90 seconds, she played defense. Slipping, parrying, occasionally absorbing shots to her arms and shoulders that would leave bruises for weeks. Thornton's confidence grew with each landed blow. His combinations got longer, more committed, more predictable. At the 2-minute mark, he threw an overhand right with everything he had. The same punch that had broken her nose yesterday. The same punch that had changed everything. Sierra was ready. She stepped inside the arc of his arm, so close she could smell his sweat and fear. Her left hand trapped his wrist while her right forearm slammed into his throat, not hard enough to crush his windpipe, but hard enough to make him gag. As he stumbled backward, she swept his lead leg and sent him crashing to the mat. The impact shook the platform. 220 pounds of Pentagon privilege hitting the ground like a sack of concrete. Sierra didn't follow him down. She stepped back, waiting. "Get up," she said quietly. "We're not done." Thornton's face had gone from red to purple. He scrambled to his feet, dignity abandoned, pure rage taking over. "I'm going to break you. I'm going to break you so badly they'll never let another woman try this again." "You already tried that." Sierra touched her swollen nose. "It didn't work." He charged like a wounded bull, all power and no technique. Sierra sidestepped, grabbed his wrist, and used his momentum to send him sprawling again. This time she dropped with him, transitioning smoothly to a mounted position before he could recover. For 3 seconds, she had him completely controlled. Her weight distributed perfectly across his hips, her knees pinning his arms. Then Thornton did something she hadn't expected. He spat in her face. The glob of saliva hit her cheek, mixing with the dried blood around her nose. The crowd of operators erupted in angry shouts. Chief Webb started forward, ready to call the match. Sierra raised one hand to stop him. "No," she said, wiping her face with the back of her hand. "We finished this." She released the mount, deliberately standing and stepping back to let Thornton rise. "That's the second time you've assaulted me," she said, her voice carrying across the silent assembly. "The third time won't go so well for you." Thornton scrambled up his chest, heaving. "You should have stayed down, sweetheart. You should have taken the mount and submitted me. Now I know you're too stupid to—" Sierra closed the distance before he finished speaking. Her first strike was a palm heel to his solar plexus that doubled him over. The second was a knee to his face that straightened him back up. The third was a spinning elbow that connected with his temple and sent him staggering into the ropes. The combination took less than 2 seconds. Thornton grabbed the ropes to keep himself upright, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. His legs were shaking. His hands were trembling. The arrogant sneer had been replaced by something Sierra had seen in combat before. The look of a man who'd just realized he was going to lose. "Yield," she said, not a request. "Yield, and this ends." "Never." He pushed off the ropes, raising his fists again. "I'll die before I yield to a— Careful how you finish that sentence." The voice came from outside the ring. General Harrison Thornton, 3 stars gleaming on his uniform, had arrived flanked by 2 military police officers. His face was the color of ash as he watched his son bleeding in front of 70 Navy SEALs. "This fight is over," the general announced. "I'm ordering an immediate halt." Chief Webb stepped forward. "With respect, sir, this is a formal combatives challenge conducted under Naval Special Warfare protocols. You have no authority to halt it." "I'm a 3-star General Chief. I have authority over everything in this theater." "Not this." Webb's voice was iron. Section 47, Paragraph 3 of Nisavla's Combat Training Regulations. Once initiated, a combatives challenge can only be stopped by submission referee stoppage or medical emergency. A flag officer's preference doesn't qualify as any of those. General Thornton's face contorted with fury. "You're ending your career, Chief." "My career ended the day you and your friends got Daniel Blackwood killed." Webb held the general's gaze without flinching. "You remember Daniel, don't you, sir? The operator who was investigating your little council before Benghazi?" The words landed like grenades. Sierra felt the world shift around her. Webb had just accused a 3-star general of murder, or something close to it, in front of 70 witnesses. There was no taking that back. That's a very dangerous accusation, Chief. General Thornton's voice had gone quiet, controlled. The voice of a man calculating his options. It's not an accusation, sir. It's a promise. Webb pulled a phone from his pocket. Right now, copies of Daniel Blackwood's investigation files are being uploaded to 7 different news organizations. Names, dates, evidence of systematic targeting of female operators, evidence of cover-ups at the highest levels. You're bluffing. Call my bluff. But Webb smiled, and it was the most dangerous expression Sierra had ever seen. Or better yet, let your son finish what he started. Let the whole world see what the Restoration Council really stands for. Silence stretched across the combatives' area like a wire about to snap. General Thornton turned to his son, still bleeding, still standing in the ring. Vance, end this, now. Father, I can beat her. I just need... You've already lost. You lost the moment you hit her in front of witnesses. The general's voice dripped with contempt. Now you're bleeding in front of 70 SEALs while a woman half your size makes you look like a fool. There's no winning this. There's only damage control. Lieutenant Commander Thornton's face crumpled. In that moment, Sierra saw him clearly for the first time. Not a monster, not an evil mastermind, just a weak man who'd spent his entire life in his father's shadow, never quite good enough, never quite worthy. He'd hurt women because he couldn't handle being inferior to them. He'd destroyed careers because he couldn't compete with talent. He was pathetic. And Sierra almost felt sorry for him. Almost. Your father's right, she said, stepping closer. You can't beat me. You were never going to beat me. Not because I'm special, not because I'm lucky, but because you've spent your whole life learning to fight in controlled environments where someone always stops things before you really get hurt. She raised her fists again. I learned to fight in places where no one stops anything, where losing means dying, where the only rule is survival. Thornton's eyes darted to his father, to the military police, to the assembled operators, looking for someone to save him, finding no one. Last chance, Sierra said. Yield. Walk away. Face whatever consequences are coming. Or stay in this ring and find out exactly how badly I can hurt you before someone decides it's a medical emergency. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Lieutenant Commander Vance Thornton West Point, boxing champion Pentagon Golden Boy, son of a 3-star general, did something no one expected. He attacked. Not Sierra, his father. He lunged out of the ring, fists flying, screaming incoherently about pressure and expectations and never being good enough. The military police tackled him before he reached the general, but not before one wild punch connected with General Thornton's jaw. The scene dissolved into chaos. Military police shouting, operators scrambling back, General Thornton on the ground, bleeding from his lip, staring at his son with an expression of absolute horror. Chief Webb appeared at Sierra's side. Well, that's not how I expected this to end. Is it over? Her voice sounded distant to her own ears. The fight. Yeah. Whatever's coming next. Webb shook his head slowly. That's just beginning. They watched as Vance Thornton was dragged away, still screaming about his father, about the pressure, about everything he'd never been able to say. The general was helped to his feet by his aide's blood on his uniform, his carefully constructed world crumbling around him. Webb, General Thornton's voice was barely controlled. This isn't finished. Whatever you think you're going to expose, whatever you think you know, you have no idea who you're dealing with. I know exactly who I'm dealing with, sir. Webb pulled out his phone again. The upload finished 2 minutes ago. CNN, Fox, The Washington Post, The New York Times. By noon, the whole world's going to know about the Restoration Council. The general's face went white. You wouldn't dare. I've been waiting 6 years to dare, sir. 6 years of watching good people have their careers destroyed. 6 years of wondering if my best friend was killed because he got too close to the truth. Webb stepped forward until he was inches from the general's face. Daniel Blackwood was a better man than you'll ever be, and his daughter just proved that everything you believe about women in combat is a lie. General Thornton looked at Sierra for the first time. Really looked at her. Saw the broken nose, the bruised face, the unwavering stance. Saw his future evaporating. This is treason, he whispered. You're destroying national security. No, sir. You destroyed it years ago when you decided that protecting your ideology was more important than protecting your country. Webb turned his back on the general, a deliberate insult that carried more weight than any words. Someone take the general into custody. He's not leaving this base until NCIS has had a very long conversation with him. 2 of Thornton's own aides stepped forward, their faces stone. They'd seen everything. They'd heard everything. Whatever loyalty they'd once felt had evaporated. General Thornton, you'll need to come with us. You can't do this. I'm a 3-star. You're a suspect in a criminal conspiracy, sir. The senior aide's voice was flat. We can do this the easy way or the hard way. General Harrison Thornton, career. Pentagon operator member of the Restoration Council, looked around at the faces of 70 Navy SEALs. Looked at his son being loaded into a military police vehicle. Looked at Chief Webb's phone still glowing with confirmation of uploaded files. He had no cards left to play. I want my lawyer, he said quietly. You'll get one. The aide took his arm. Eventually. They led him away, and the combatives area fell silent. Sierra stood in the ring alone, surrounded by a circle of gold tridents, blood still drying on her face. The sun had fully risen now, painting everything in shades of orange and gold. Chief Webb climbed into the ring and stood beside her. How do you feel? I don't know. Her voice was hollow. I came here to fight Thornton. I didn't come here to take down a 3-star general and expose a military conspiracy. Sometimes you don't get to choose the size of your battles. Webb put a hand on her shoulder. Your father would be proud of you. Would he? Sierra finally looked at him, and her eyes were wet. We just detonated a bomb that's going to destroy careers, maybe send people to prison. We don't even know if the evidence will hold up. We don't know if... Sierra. Webb's voice was gentle but firm. The evidence will hold up. Your father was thorough. He documented everything. Names, dates, operations, communications. The Restoration Council has been operating for over a decade, and Daniel Blackwood spent the last 2 years of his life building a case against them. And they killed him for it. We don't know that for certain, but we're going to find out. Webb squeezed her shoulder. The fight you just won. That was the easy part. What comes next is going to be harder. Investigations, testimonies, media attention, people trying to discredit you, and everyone who stood with you. I know. Do you? Because once this story breaks, you're going to become the face of everything those people hate. Every woman who's ever been pushed out, every operator who's ever questioned the old guard, they're going to look to you. Sierra bent down and picked up one of the tridents from the circle around her. She turned it over in her hands, feeling the weight of it. This belonged to my father. I know. I put it there. She looked up sharply. I've been carrying it since Benghazi, Webb said. Waiting for the right moment to give it back to his family. This seemed like the right moment. Sierra closed her fist around the trident, feeling its edges press into her palm. Thank you, Chief. Don't thank me yet. We've got a lot of work to do. He turned to face the assembled operators, raising his voice. Listen up. What you witnessed here today stays in the family until the official story breaks. No social media, no calls home, no conversations outside this group. NCIS is going to want statements from everyone. Tell them the truth, the whole truth. We've got nothing to hide. 60 voices responded in unison. Hooyah, Chief. The formation began to disperse, operators heading toward the team building in small groups. Several stopped to grip Sierra's shoulder or nod in her direction. Words weren't necessary. The gesture said everything. Senior Chief Morrison was the last to approach. Hell of a morning, Blackwood. That's one way to put it. There's something you should know. Before everything went sideways with Thornton's breakdown, you had him beat, completely. Everyone saw it. Morrison paused. I've been training special operators for 23 years. I've never seen anyone fight the way you do. My grandfather taught me, and my father. They taught you well. Morrison started to turn away, then stopped. One more thing. Sarah Chen is here. She wanted to watch the fight, but Webb thought it was better if she stayed out of sight until the dust settled. Where is she? Team building. Conference room B. Morrison's expression softened slightly. She's been crying since Thornton attacked his father. I think she finally believes it might actually be over. Sierra found Chen exactly where Morrison had said. The former pilot was sitting alone at the conference table. Her face streaked with tears, her hands still wrapped around the same coffee cup from the night before. I watched on the security feed, Chen said without looking up. Every second of it. Sierra sat down across from her. And I don't know what to feel. Chen finally raised her eyes. 3 years I've been waiting for someone to believe me. 3 years of being told I was paranoid, that I was making excuses for my own failures. Now it's all coming out, and I just feel empty. Yeah, empty. Chen set down her coffee cup. How do you do it? How do you keep fighting when the system is designed to crush you? Sierra thought about the question. Thought about her father's journal, her grandfather's lessons. The years of training that had prepared her for a moment she couldn't have predicted. I don't think about the system, she said finally. I think about the next step, the next challenge, the next person standing in my way. She paused. When I was 15, my grandfather told me something I didn't understand until today. What was that? He said that the biggest battles aren't fought in war zones or training rings. They're fought in the minds of people who refuse to see you as equal. You can't defeat that kind of enemy with fists or weapons. You can only defeat them by being so undeniably excellent that they're forced to acknowledge the truth. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Do you think it will change anything? The exposure, the investigations. I don't know. Sierra leaned back in her chair, exhaustion finally catching up to her. But I know this Vance Thornton is never going to hurt another woman in uniform. His father is never going to make another problem disappear. And everyone who's been suffering in silence is going to know that someone finally fought back. That's something. It's a start. The door opened, and Chief Webb entered with a phone pressed to his ear. Understood. We'll be ready. He ended the call and looked at Sierra. NCIS is 30 minutes out. They want statements from everyone starting with you. I figured. There's something else. The Washington Post just published the first story. It's already the top trending topic on every social media platform. Webb's expression was unreadable. You're about to become very famous, Blackwood. I didn't want to be famous. Nobody does, but sometimes fame finds you anyway. He set his phone on the table, showing her the headline, Navy SEAL exposes secret counsel targeting women in special operations files detail. Years of systematic discrimination. Below the headline was a photo of Sierra bloody and defiant, standing in the combatives' ring, surrounded by gold tridents. Where did they get that picture? Doesn't matter. What matters is that the story's out. The genie's not going back in the bottle. Webb sat down heavily. The next few weeks are going to be chaos. Congressional hearings, media interviews, people from both sides trying to use you as a symbol for their agenda. I'm not anyone's symbol. You are now. Webb's voice was tired, but not unkind. The question is what you're going to do with it. Sierra looked at the photo on the phone, at her own face, battered but unbroken, at the tridents scattered around her feet like an offering. She thought about her father who had started this fight years before she even knew it existed, about her grandfather who had given her the tools to finish it, about Chen and the other women whose careers had been destroyed by men who couldn't handle being equal. I'm going to do what I've always done, she said quietly. I'm going to take the next step, and then the next one, and then the next one after that. Until what? Sierra picked up her father's trident from her pocket, holding it up so the morning light caught its surface. Until there's no one left who needs to be reminded that women belong in combat. The NCIS agents arrived in 3 black SUVs, their expressions carefully neutral. Special Agent Victoria Reyes led the team, a 20-year veteran with silver streaks in her dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. She'd investigated senators, admirals, and cabinet members. A 3-star general and his son were just another Tuesday. Petty Officer Blackwood. Reyes didn't extend her hand. I've been reading about you for the past hour. Quite a morning. That's one way to describe it. I'm going to need a statement, detailed, from the beginning. Reyes glanced at Sierra's battered face. But first you should know something. General Thornton is claiming you attacked his son unprovoked. He's saying the combatives' challenge was staged to humiliate a superior officer. Sierra felt her jaw tighten. There are 70 witnesses who saw his son punch me in the face yesterday. 68 of whom are Navy SEALs with a vested interest in protecting one of their own. Reyes's voice was flat professional. The general's lawyers are already spinning this as a coordinated attack on military leadership. A mutiny, essentially. Chief Webb stepped forward. That's garbage, and everyone knows it. What everyone knows, and what can be proven in court, are 2 different things, Chief. Reyes turned back to Sierra. The files that were uploaded, the ones from your father's investigation, they're compelling. But they're also 6 years old. Defense attorneys will argue they've been fabricated, manipulated, or taken out of context. They weren't. I believe you, but believing isn't enough. Reyes pulled out a tablet and showed Sierra the screen. This is a list of every officer named in your father's files. 12 names. 2 are deceased, 3 have retired, and 7 are currently serving in positions of significant authority. Sierra scanned the names. Deputy commanders, Pentagon liaisons, training directorate chiefs, men who controlled careers with the stroke of a pen. They're all connected to the Restoration Council. According to your father's documentation, yes. But here's the problem. Reyes swiped to another screen. In the past 2 hours since the story broke, 3 of these officers have already released statements denying any involvement. 2 others have announced immediate retirement for personal reasons, and the remaining 2 have gone completely dark. Dark, can't be reached. Not at their offices, not at their homes, not on any phone we've tried. Reyes's expression hardened. When powerful people disappear during an investigation, it usually means one of 2 things. They're running or they're planning something. Webb's hand moved instinctively toward his sidearm. You think they might try something here? I think that when a secret organization is exposed after a decade of successful operations, they don't just surrender. They fight back. Reyes looked at Sierra. Petty Officer Blackwood, until this investigation is complete, you're going to need protection. I can protect myself. I saw the video of your fight. I'm sure you can. But you can't watch your own back 24 hours a day, and you can't see a sniper from 800 meters. Reyes gestured to two of her agents. These officers will be with you at all times. I don't need babysitters. With respect, Petty Officer, this isn't optional. You're the primary witness in what's about to become the biggest military scandal since Abu Ghraib. There are people who would benefit greatly from your silence. Reyes paused. Permanent silence. The weight of those words settled over Sierra like a cold blanket. You really think they'd try to kill me? I think your father was investigating the same people and he's dead. Reyes's voice softened slightly. I'm not saying Benghazi was assassination. I'm saying we don't know what it was, and until we do, we're going to assume the worst. Sierra thought about her father's journal. The entries about being followed, the concerns about his communications being monitored, the contingency plans he'd made in case something happened to him. He'd known. Even then, he'd known they might come for him. Okay, she said quietly. What do you need from me? The next 6 hours were a blur of questions, statements, and documentation. NCIS agents recorded every detail of Sierra's interactions with Thornton from his first day with the platoon to the punch that had started everything. They photographed her injuries, collected medical records, and interviewed witnesses one by one. By midday, the story had exploded beyond anyone's control. Every major news network was running coverage. Politicians from both parties were demanding investigations. Women's advocacy groups were organizing protests outside military installations across the country. And social media had transformed Sierra into a symbol her bloody face and defiant stance reproduced millions of times with hashtags like #SealStrong and #Warrior Women. She hated all of it. You need to see this. Senior Chief Morrison found her in the team room staring at a muted television showing her own image. General Thornton just made a statement. He unmuted the TV. General Harrison Thornton stood behind a podium, his jaw swollen where his son had hit him, his uniform perfectly pressed despite the chaos of the morning. His voice was steady, controlled the voice of a man who'd spent decades mastering the art of spin. The allegations against me and my fellow officers are completely false. What you're seeing is a coordinated attack by individuals who oppose military readiness and traditional values. My son, Lieutenant Commander Vance Thornton, was the victim of a setup designed to discredit our family and our service. Sierra felt her blood pressure spike. The woman at the center of these allegations has demonstrated a pattern of insubordination and attention-seeking behavior. Her presence in naval special warfare was always controversial, and this incident proves that the integration experiment has failed. He's lying, Morrison growled. Everyone knows he's lying. Knowing and proving are different things. Sierra watched as the general continued his words, smooth and practiced. I have retained legal counsel and will be fighting these baseless accusations with every resource at my disposal. The truth will come out, and when it does, the American people will see that this was nothing but a witch hunt against a decorated military family. The press conference ended, and the screen switched to talking heads debating whether the general was a victim or a villain. He's good, Sierra said flatly. I'll give him that. He's very good. He's had practice. Men like Thornton don't reach 3 stars without knowing how to survive scandals. Morrison turned off the television. But this isn't like his other cover-ups. This time there are files, documentation, witnesses who aren't afraid to talk. Sarah Chen. Among others, NCIS has already made contact with 2 other women who were pushed out by officers connected to the council. They're willing to testify. Sierra felt something shift in her chest. Hope, maybe, or something close to it. It's not just about me anymore, is it? It never was. Morrison sat down across from her. Your father understood that. He wasn't just building a case against individuals. He was exposing a system, a culture that had been protecting predators and silencing victims for years. And now that system is under attack from every direction. Congressional committees are scheduling hearings. The Secretary of Defense has ordered a full review of integration policies, and the President himself released a statement supporting the investigation. The President. Morrison pulled up his phone and showed her the statement. The allegations against members of our military leadership are deeply troubling. Every service member, regardless of gender, deserves to serve in an environment free from discrimination and abuse. I have instructed the Department of Defense to cooperate fully with all investigations and to hold accountable anyone found to have violated the trust of the American people. That's significant. That's the President throwing General Thornton under the bus. Morrison almost smiled. Politicians can smell a losing fight. Nobody wants to be seen defending a man accused of running a secret organization to push women out of special operations. The door opened, and Chief Webb entered with Agent Reyes. We need to talk, Webb said, his expression grim. There's been a development. What kind of development? Lieutenant Commander Thornton is talking. Reyes sat down at the table. His lawyers tried to stop him, but he's having some kind of breakdown. He's been telling anyone who'll listen about his father's organization, the Council's operations, everything. Sierra leaned forward. He's confessing, more than confessing. He's providing names, dates, operations, things even your father's files didn't include. Reyes pulled out her tablet. According to Vance Thornton, the Restoration Council has been active for 15 years. They've successfully removed at least 47 female operators and pilots from various special operations programs, and they've had help from inside the Pentagon, the CIA, and at least 2 congressional offices. The scope of it was staggering. 47 women, Sierra said quietly. 47 careers destroyed. At minimum. Thornton admits there could be more he wasn't told about. Reyes shook her head. He's giving us everything. Names of recruiters, funding sources, communication protocols. It's like he's trying to burn the whole organization down to punish his father. Why would he do that? Because his father abandoned him. Reyes's voice was clinical, analytical. When General Thornton saw his son losing that fight, when he realized the cover-up was failing, he tried to distance himself. Called his own son an embarrassment. Said he should have known Vance couldn't handle the pressure. So Vance is getting revenge. Hell hath no fury like a narcissist scorned. Reyes almost smiled. The general spent 30 years building this organization, protecting it, hiding it from investigators. His own son is going to tear it apart in a matter of days. Webb spoke up. There's something else. Something Vance said that we need to discuss. What? He claims the council was involved in delaying the Benghazi response. Webb's voice was careful, controlled. He says his father specifically ordered a communications blackout that prevented reinforcements from reaching the compound in time. Sierra felt the world go still. Are you saying? I'm saying we don't have proof yet. Vance's word alone isn't enough. But if what he's saying is true, if the council deliberately interfered with the Benghazi response because your father was getting too close to exposing them. Webb stopped, unable to finish the sentence. Sierra stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Her hands were shaking. Her vision was blurring at the edges. They killed him. They killed my father to protect their secret. We don't know that for certain. Don't. Her voice cracked like a whip. Don't tell me we don't know. Vance Thornton just confirmed what I've suspected for 6 years. My father died because he was trying to do the right thing, and those bastards murdered him for it. The room fell silent. Reyes, Morrison, Webb. They all watched her with expressions of helpless sympathy. I want to talk to Vance Thornton, Sierra said finally. Directly, face to face. Reyes shook her head. That's not possible. He's in custody and his lawyers don't get a say. He assaulted me. I'm a victim in this case and I have a right to confront him. Sierra's voice was steady now, cold. Make it happen. Even if I could arrange it, what would you hope to accomplish? He's already talking. He's already giving us everything. I don't want his information. Sierra met Reyes's eyes. I want him to look me in the face and tell me what he knows about my father's death. I want him to understand exactly what he and his family took from me. Reyes studied her for a long moment. I'll see what I can do. The meeting with Vance Thornton happened 4 hours later in an interrogation room at NCIS headquarters. His lawyers had fought it, but Sierra's status as a victim, combined with Vance's own willingness to talk, had overridden their objections. He looked smaller than she remembered. Diminished. The arrogant officer who'd punched her in the face had been replaced by something hollow, a man whose entire identity had collapsed in a matter of hours. Petty Officer Blackwood. His voice was hoarse, his eyes red-rimmed. I wondered if you'd come. I'm here. Sierra sat down across from him, the table between them a reminder that they were on opposite sides of everything. You know why. Benghazi. He nodded slowly. My father's greatest achievement. That's what he called it. His greatest achievement. Explain. Your father had been investigating the council for 2 years. He'd gathered documentation, built relationships with sources inside the organization, created a network of people ready to expose everything. Vance's hands trembled on the table. My father found out 3 weeks before Benghazi. He realized that if Daniel Blackwood came home from that deployment, it would all be over. So he killed him. He didn't pull the trigger. He never pulls the trigger. Vance laughed, a broken sound. He just made sure the cavalry didn't arrive in time. Delayed communications, misrouted requests. By the time anyone realized what was happening, it was too late. Sierra felt something inside her crack. She'd known. Some part of her had always known. But hearing it confirmed, hearing the casual brutality of it described, was something else entirely. Why? Her voice was barely a whisper. Why would anyone think their secret organization was worth killing American soldiers? Because the council believes they're saving the military, saving the country. Vance shook his head. They think integration is the first step toward collapse, that women in combat will weaken our forces, destroy unit cohesion, make us vulnerable to our enemies. They see themselves as patriots. They're murderers. Yes. Vance met her eyes for the first time. They are. And I was part of it. Not Benghazi, I didn't know about that until later. But I helped push women out of programs. I falsified evaluations. I made careers disappear. His voice cracked. I told myself it was for the good of the service. I told myself the women weren't really qualified anyway. I told myself a lot of lies. Why are you telling me this now? Because my father looked at me this morning like I was garbage. Like everything I'd done for him, every career I'd destroyed, every line I'd crossed meant nothing. Vance's face twisted with something between rage and grief. I spent my whole life trying to earn his approval, and the moment I became a liability, he threw me away. So this is revenge. This is justice. Vance leaned forward. I'm going to prison Blackwood. I know that. I've made peace with it. But before I go, I'm going to make sure everyone who was part of this organization goes down with me, starting with my father. Will your testimony be enough? My testimony, plus your father's files, plus the other women who are coming forward, plus the documentation I've been providing NCIS for the past 6 hours. Vance almost smiled. My father is finished. The whole council is finished. The only question is, how many of them go to military prison and how many go to federal? Sierra sat back in her chair, processing everything she'd heard. 6 years of questions finally answered. 6 years of grief finally given a target. "My father was a hero," she said quietly. "He died trying to protect people like me, people the council wanted to destroy. Your father was the bravest man I never met." Vance's voice was sincere, perhaps the first sincere thing he'd said. "And you're just like him. That's why I hated you from the moment I saw your file. You were everything I could never be." "What do you mean? Authentic, capable, earned?" Vance shook his head. "I was born into my father's world, his ambitions, his prejudices, his organization. You built yourself from nothing. You became a SEAL because you wanted it more than anything, not because someone expected it, not because it was the family business, because it was who you are. That doesn't excuse what you did. Nothing excuses what I did." Vance stood slowly signaling to the guard that he was ready to return to his cell. "But maybe by destroying everything my father built, I can start to pay for it." He paused at the door. "Blackwood, one more thing." "What?" "There's a safe in my father's study, behind the painting of Teddy Roosevelt. The combination is my mother's birthday reversed. Inside you'll find the original orders he gave about Benghazi, the proof that he deliberately delayed the response." Vance's voice was flat, emotionless. "Make sure the world sees it." The door closed behind him, and Sierra was alone with the weight of everything she'd learned. Her father had been murdered. Not by terrorists, not by the fog of war, but by men who wore the same uniform, who swore the same oath, who claimed to love the same country. And now, finally, she had the proof to destroy them. She stood up slowly, feeling older than her 31 years. The fight with Thornton seemed like a lifetime ago. The woman who'd stepped into that ring had been looking for validation, for acknowledgement that she belonged. The woman who walked out of this interrogation room was looking for something else entirely. Justice. And she wasn't going to stop until she found it. The raid on General Thornton's residence happened at 0300 the following morning. Sierra wasn't supposed to be there. Agent Reyes had made that explicitly clear. This was a federal operation, not a personal vendetta. Sierra went anyway. She rode in the back of the third SUV, wearing borrowed tactical gear, her NCIS escort too stunned by recent events to argue effectively. Chief Webb sat beside her, his expression carved from stone. "You know this could end your career," he said quietly. "Participating in a raid you weren't authorized for." "My career ended the moment I found out they murdered my father." Sierra checked her sidearm. "Everything after this is borrowed time." The convoy stopped 2 blocks from the Thornton estate. Federal agents spilled out of vehicles moving with practiced efficiency toward a house that had hosted senators, generals, and cabinet members. Agent Reyes appeared at Sierra's window. "Blackwood, I told you to stay at the base. You told me a lot of things. I'm here anyway." Reyes stared at her for a long moment, then shook her head. "Stay behind the perimeter. If anything happens to you during this operation, my career goes down with yours." "Understood." The agents moved in. Sierra watched from the shadows as they breached the front door, their shouts of "Federal agents" echoing through the quiet neighborhood. Lights flickered on in surrounding houses. Somewhere a dog started barking. 10 minutes later, Reyes emerged from the house carrying an evidence bag. Inside was a folder thick with documents. "We found the safe," she said, her voice tight. Vance was right. Everything's in there. Orders communications timeline of the Benghazi delay. All of it bearing General Thornton's signature. Sierra felt her knees go weak. 6 years. 6 years of wondering, of suspecting, of being told she was paranoid for questioning the official story. Can I see it? Not yet. It's evidence. Reyes's expression softened slightly. But I can tell you what it says. General Thornton ordered a communications blackout affecting 3 separate response teams. He claimed it was a security protocol, but the timing was precise. Too precise to be coincidence. He knew my father was in that compound. He knew, and he made sure help wouldn't arrive until it was too late. Sierra turned away, unable to look at the house where a murderer had lived in comfort for 6 years, while her father rotted in the ground. Webb's hand landed on her shoulder. Sierra, there's something else. What? They found a list. Names of everyone in the Restoration Council, along with detailed records of every operation they've conducted. Webb's voice was rough. 47 women pushed out of special operations programs, 12 investigations buried, 6 suspicious deaths that were never properly examined. 6 deaths. Your father wasn't the only one who got too close to the truth. Webb squeezed her shoulder. But he was the one who left enough evidence for us to finally end this. The arrests happened over the next 72 hours. 12 officers across 4 branches of service taken into custody on charges ranging from conspiracy to obstruction of justice to accessory to murder. The news coverage was relentless cameras capturing perp walks that would have been unthinkable a week ago. General Harrison Thornton was arrested at his office in the Pentagon, his 3 stars ripped from his shoulders by MPs who'd once saluted him. He said nothing as they led him away, but his eyes found the nearest camera with a look of pure hatred. Sierra watched the footage from the team room at Coronado, surrounded by operators who'd become her family. It's really over, Senior Chief Morrison said, disbelief coloring his voice. I never thought I'd see the day. It's not over. Sierra kept her eyes on the screen. The trials haven't started. The verdicts haven't been delivered. We've won a battle, not the war. But the council is destroyed. Their leadership is in custody. Their secrets are public. And there are people who believe they were right. Sierra finally looked away from the television. People who think integration is destroying the military. People who will see Thornton as a martyr instead of a criminal. Chief Webb nodded slowly. She's right. This isn't going to end with a few arrests. The ideology that created the council, it's still out there. It's going to take years, maybe decades, to root it out completely. Then we keep fighting. Morrison's jaw set with determination. We keep proving that women belong in combat until there's no one left who can deny it. The congressional hearings began 2 weeks later. Sierra was called to testify on the 3rd day her dress uniform pressed and perfect her father's trident pinned beside her own. The chamber was packed. Senators, representatives, military brass media from around the world. All of them watching as a 5'4" Navy SEAL prepared to speak truth to power. Petty Officer Blackwood. Senator Mitchell, the committee chair, leaned forward. You've submitted written testimony detailing your encounters with Lieutenant Commander Thornton and your discovery of the Restoration Council's activities. Is there anything you'd like to add before we begin questions? Sierra adjusted the microphone. Her hands weren't shaking. She'd faced worse than politicians. Yes, Senator. I'd like to say something about my father. The chamber went silent. Master Chief Daniel Blackwood served this country for 23 years. He completed 17 combat deployments. He saved countless lives, and he was murdered by men who wore the same uniform he did because he tried to protect people like me. Her voice didn't waver. My father believed in the military. He believed in the oath we all take to protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. He never imagined that some of those enemies would be wearing stars on their shoulders. Senator Mitchell shifted uncomfortably. Several other committee members looked down at their notes. I'm not here to ask for sympathy. I'm not here to demand special treatment. I'm here to make sure that what happened to my father, what happened to 47 other women, what almost happened to me, never happens again. Sierra paused. The Restoration Council believed they were protecting the military by pushing women out. They were wrong. They were weakening it by rejecting capable warriors based on prejudice instead of performance. Petty Officer Blackwood, a senator from the other side of the aisle, spoke up, his tone skeptical. Some would argue that the physical differences between men and women make mixed gender units inherently less effective. How do you respond to that? I respond by pointing to my service record, Senator. I completed the same training as every other SEAL. I've deployed to combat zones and performed my duties without distinction based on gender. The only people who've told me I don't belong are people who've never seen me operate. But surely you can acknowledge that integration poses challenges. Everything poses challenges. Training poses challenges. Combat poses challenges. The question isn't whether something is difficult. The question is whether the difficulty is worth the outcome. Sierra met the senator's eyes without flinching. 47 qualified warriors were removed from special operations because of their gender. How many missions were compromised because the best person for the job was pushed out? How many lives were lost because capable operators were replaced by less capable ones, who happened to be male? The senator had no response. The hearings continued for 3 weeks. Sierra testified twice more, answering questions about her training, her deployments, her confrontation with Thornton. She spoke clearly, professionally, without emotion. The emotion came later in private moments when the cameras weren't watching. Sarah Chen found her one evening sitting alone in the team room, her father's journal open in her lap. I thought you might be here. Chen sat down beside her. The final report came out today. Did you hear? I heard. The investigation had concluded that General Thornton and 5 other officers would face court-martial for conspiracy, obstruction of justice, and conduct unbecoming. 3 of them, including Thornton, would face additional charges related to Benghazi charges that could result in life sentences. It's really happening, Chen said quietly. After everything, it's really happening. Yes. You don't seem happy. Sierra closed the journal slowly. My father is still dead. Nothing that happens in a courtroom changes that. No, but it means his death wasn't meaningless. It means he accomplished what he set out to do, even if it took 6 years and his daughter finishing the job. Sierra considered that. She thought about her father's entries, his determination to expose the council, his willingness to risk everything for what was right. He would have hated this, she said finally. The attention, the media, the politicians using his name to score points. Probably. He just wanted to serve, to do his job, to protect the people who needed protecting. Sierra's voice cracked slightly. He never asked to be a symbol. Neither did you. Chen put a hand on her arm. But sometimes symbols are what people need. Something to point to when they're told they don't belong. Something to remind them that the fight is worth fighting. The trials began 4 months later. Sierra attended every day that her duty schedule allowed, sitting in the gallery watching as the men who'd destroyed her father faced justice. General Thornton's defense was elaborate, expensive, and ultimately futile. His lawyers argued that the Restoration Council was a legitimate policy advocacy group, that the Benghazi delay was a tragic miscommunication, that the evidence against him had been fabricated by enemies with political agendas. The jury didn't buy it. The conviction came down on a Thursday afternoon. Guilty on all counts. Sentencing would follow in 6 weeks, but the legal experts agreed that Thornton would spend the rest of his life in military prison. Sierra watched as MPs led him away. His face gray, his shoulders slumped. He looked at her as he passed, and for a moment their eyes met. She saw no remorse in his gaze. Only hatred. Only the bitter fury of a man who believed he'd done nothing wrong and couldn't understand why the world had turned against him. She felt nothing in return. No satisfaction, no triumph, just a hollow emptiness where rage used to live. Chief Webb found her outside the courthouse. "How do you feel?" "I don't know." Sierra watched the transport vehicle drive away. "I thought I'd feel something. Relief, closure, something. Give it time. Justice doesn't heal wounds overnight." "Does it heal them at all?" Webb was quiet for a long moment. "Your father used to say that justice wasn't about healing. It was about balance, about making sure the scales didn't tip too far in favor of people who didn't deserve it." He put a hand on her shoulder. "The scales are balanced now. What you do with that balance is up to you." The promotion ceremony happened 3 weeks later. Sierra stood at attention while the Admiral pinned new insignia on her collar. Chief Petty Officer Sierra Blackwood, the youngest female chief in naval special warfare history. "This promotion is not about politics," the Admiral said, his voice carrying across the assembled formation. "It's not about making statements or checking boxes. It's about recognizing exceptional performance in the finest traditions of naval service." Sierra kept her eyes forward, but she could feel the weight of dozens of gazes. Operators she'd served with, officers she'd challenged, men and women who would be watching to see what she did with her new authority. Chief Blackwood has demonstrated the highest standards of tactical excellence, physical courage, and moral integrity. She has honored the legacy of those who came before her while paving the way for those who will follow. The Admiral stepped back, and the formation saluted. Sierra returned the gesture, her arms steady, her eyes dry. Later in the reception that followed, she found herself surrounded by well-wishers she barely knew. Politicians, journalists, advocacy groups, all of them wanting a piece of the woman who'd brought down the Restoration Council. She escaped to a quiet corner where Master Chief Torres was waiting. "Congratulations, Chief." "Thank you, Master Chief." "You've earned it, every bit of it." Torres handed her a glass of water. "But I'm guessing you're not interested in spending the rest of the evening shaking hands and posing for pictures. Is it that obvious? To someone who knew your father?" "Yes." Torres smiled slightly. "He hated these events too. Used to say the Navy spent more time celebrating than operating." Sierra almost laughed. "That sounds like him. There's something I've been meaning to give you. Held on to it because the timing never seemed right." Torres reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. "Your father asked me to keep this safe. Said if anything happened to him, I should give it to you when you made chief." Sierra opened the box. Inside was a ring, silver, and worn with an inscription on the inside band. Strength, honor, legacy. "It was his father's," Torres explained. "Your grandfather's. Daniel wore it through every deployment. He said it reminded him why he fought." Sierra slipped the ring onto her finger. It fit perfectly. "Thank you, Master Chief. Thank your father. He knew you'd get here eventually. Never doubted it for a second." The cemetery was quiet when Sierra arrived the next morning. She'd driven alone, refusing escorts, refusing company. This moment wasn't for anyone else. Her father's grave was marked with a simple headstone, name, rank, dates, and the seal trident etched in granite. Fresh flowers lay at its base, probably from one of his former teammates who still visited regularly. Sierra knelt in the grass, feeling the morning dew soak through her uniform pants. "Hey, Dad!" The wind rustled through nearby trees. Somewhere a bird was singing. "I got them, all of them. Thornton's going to prison for the rest of his life. The council is destroyed. Everything you worked for, everything you died for, it mattered." She pulled out his trident, the one Webb had given her, the one that had been with him in Benghazi. "I'm a chief now. Can you believe it? Your little girl a chief petty officer." She laughed softly. "You probably can believe it. You always believed in me even when I didn't believe in myself." The tears came, then the ones she'd been holding back for months. They streamed down her face as she pressed the trident against her chest. "I miss you, Dad. Every day I miss you. I wish you could have seen me take down Thornton in that ring. I wish you could have been there when they read the verdict. I wish you could be here now telling me that everything's going to be okay." She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "But I know what you'd say. You'd say that the mission isn't over, that there are still people who need protecting, still battles that need fighting. You'd say that grief is fine for a moment, but then it's time to get back to work." Sierra stood slowly, looking down at the headstone. "So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going back to work. I'm going to train the next generation of operators, men and women, to be better than I am. I'm going to make sure that nobody else has to go through what we went through." She placed the trident at the base of the headstone next to the flowers. "Your trident stays with you. I've got my own now. I've earned it." A car pulled into the cemetery parking lot. Chief Webb emerged, walking slowly toward her. He stopped at a respectful distance, waiting. "I'm ready," Sierra called to him. "Where to?" "Back to the teams. We've got work to do." She took one last look at her father's grave, at the trident gleaming in the morning sun, at the inscription that would endure long after she was gone. Master Chief Daniel Blackwood, beloved father, honored warrior. He gave everything so others could serve. "I love you, Dad," she whispered. "I'll make you proud." Then she turned and walked toward the car, toward the future, toward whatever battles lay ahead. The story that had begun with a punch to the face had ended with something far more powerful. Not violence, not revenge, not even justice, though justice had been served. It had ended with legacy. Sierra Blackwood would go on to serve 12 more years in naval special warfare. She would deploy to combat zones on 4 continents. She would train hundreds of operators, male and female, teaching them that capability mattered more than chromosomes, that courage had no gender, that the only thing standing between who you are and who you could become was the willingness to fight for it. She would never forget the men who tried to destroy her. But she would define herself not by their hatred, but by her own excellence. And every morning before the sun rose, she would run the sand berms of Coronado with her grandfather's ring on her finger and her father's memory in her heart, proving with every step that some battles are won, not in a single moment of triumph, but in a lifetime of refusing to surrender. They had punched her straight in the face. The SEALs had shown them what real combat looked like, and Sierra Blackwood had shown them what a true warrior could become.